Hopefully that's recording now. Right, hopefully, right. What I'll do is I'll go to YouTube. We're going to go planning committee. Well, basically, we'll get to listen to it in a minute.
But at the moment, they would be within their rights to undertake the works themselves. We'd have no control over the quality of the work or the standard of the work. So the TP.
Well, basically.
Council Stephen Boyce, if you'd like to come up here, sir. Howard Cardus, who's the agent, and Councillor Richard Duffield, who's the ward rep. Chairman. Yes, sir.
I've just realised I'm going to withdraw from the room for this application. I'll not take part because I know some of the objectors are applicants. I just realised. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Mike?
No.
He needs, no, he doesn't have to.
No, okay. You're okay to remain.
This here.
Okay. Over to you then, please, Nicola.
Chair. So this is an application for the creation of 2 residential pitches for the station of caravans to provide accommodation for 1 traveller family. The site is located to the northeast of the village of Beatley and immediately adjacent to Ottersmead Holiday Park, which has permission for 15 holiday pitches and is currently in operation. The site lies approximately 130 metres from the village's settlement boundary and lies along an unlit section of footpath that joins it to the rest of the village. Mm-hmm. The site currently has permission to be used as a garden centre, which is proposed to continue as part of this application alongside the residential use. One of the pitches that is proposed as part of this application is already occupied. And so here is some photos of the site entrance as it is now. This is part of the road frontage. This is part of the proposed site for the,
Chairman.
The residential use. One of the pitches that is proposed as part of this application is already occupied. And so here is some photos of the site entrance as it is now. This is part of the road frontage. This is part of the proposed site for the pitch that isn't currently occupied. These are photographs of the pitch that is occupied on the site already, along with the garden centre building, which is the clad building with the pitch with the caravan that occupies the site immediately behind it. So part of the proposed plan, the pitch already occupied is behind the garden centre, with the other proposed pitch to the south. The utility blocks haven't yet been constructed, and these would be close to the pitches and would comprise cloakroom, utility area, and a day room, each measuring 10 metres by 5 metres, and they would be clad with a tiled roof. It is worth noting, as part of this site, there has been a previous refusal of planning permission for a new dwelling. At the time of this refusal, the gypsy and traveller status of the applicant wasn't brought forward as a material planning consideration, but officers are satisfied as part of this application that the information in respect of the status has been submitted, and therefore we can consider it against the relevant policies in place for gypsy and traveller sites. So in terms of the assessment, both the National Planning Policy Framework and the Planning Policy for Traveller Sites support the sufficient supply of homes for gypsy and traveller communities, with the latter also encouraging local authorities to consider sites which are mixed residential and business uses, which this application proposes. The local policy HOU08 permits the provision of new sites providing certain criteria met, including sustainability and highway safety. Officers have considered the proposal against this policy. There is a view that the site is reasonably close to Beatley Village, giving access to local services and facilities, which also encourages community engagement. In addition to this, alongside the Highway Authority, officers are of the view that the proposal would not lead to any unacceptable impact upon highway safety. It is noted that there is no footpath linking the site to the village, which would result in some reliance upon private vehicle. Weight is also given to the fact that it's a brownfield site due to the existing use as a garden centre. In terms of the impact upon the character of the site, it is immediately located adjacent to an existing holiday park and would reflect the infrastructure that is currently on that site. The pictures are also set within the garden centre buildings, so wouldn't be isolated. And therefore, overall, it's considered that it wouldn't appear isolated in the rural landscape. And whilst there would be a degree of encroachment upon the countryside, it's not considered on balance that this would be harmful to the rural character of the area. Officers have also considered residential amenity and have concluded that there's sufficient distance between the site and neighbouring properties. We have received objections from the parish council with regards to the site's location outside the settlement boundary, and we've also received 2 letters of objection in respect of the fear of future development, retrospective nature of the application, and the lack of benefits the site would bring to the village. There have also been issues with regards to the use of the site currently in operation, which could be dealt with outside of the remit of this planning application. And we have also received a letter in support of the application as well. So weighing up the application, it's accepted that the site lies outside of the settlement boundary with potential reliance upon private vehicle to access local services. However, the site is within close proximity to the village, and it would represent brownfield development and encourage a mixed use of the site, which is covered by the planning policy for traveller sites. As such, officers are of the view the proposal meets the aims of local and national policy and have recommended approval of the application subject to the conditions detailed in the report.
Okay,
Absolute shocking.
Phil, Councillor Duffield, would you like to go first or last? Last, okay, thank you. We have the chairman of Beatley Parish Council, Stephen Boyce. 3 minutes, please, sir.
Steve Boyce, Chairman of Beatley Parish Council. The Council objects to this repurposing of a redundant garden centre, or very often not opened garden centre, with 2 large residential 3-bedroom units sited outside of the settlement boundary. We already have a gypsy traveller site within the parish, at least one, and we have very little amenity within the village, no shops to call on. You talk about the connection with the local village, but there is nothing in
Why? What?
Beatley for them to connect with. There's a village hall and a hairdresser's. We object to this planning application.
Yeah, good on you, boy.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, I'm just got to clear my thing. We've now got Howard Cardus, please, who's the agent. 3 minutes, please, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I'm Howard Cardus, speaking on behalf of the agent.
And listen how he doesn't want to try and answer questions, or he's...
Thank you to Bretton Council Planning Department, particularly Case Officer Nicola Ellis, for engaging with the agent proactively throughout this application, which is for a mixed-use scheme comprising 2 residential pitches for static caravans, each served by a utility building with cloakroom, utility area and day room. The garden centre building is retained, with the proposed pitches reached by the existing access. First and foremost, it is important to note the applicant meets gypsy and traveller criteria as defined by the government's planning policy for traveller sites publication, whilst the national planning policy framework supports the supply of homes for gypsy and traveller communities, and the planning policy for traveller sites encourages local planning authorities to support mixed-use sites, provided the amenity of neighbouring residents is not adversely impacted. Policy HOUR8 in your own local plan allows for the provision of new sites for gypsies and travellers, subject to the compliance with 5 criteria, which are set out in the report before you in paragraph 2.5. The site is well located to the settlement of Beatley, with good access to its services and facilities, as well as those on offer within the garden centre itself. This is a brownfield site which is promoted in national policy and located alongside the garden centre. Utilities are already available for the proposed pitches from the existing use. So this is a promoted national mixed-use scheme utilising brownfield land to its best effect. We note there are no objections from Northern County Council Highways on highway safety grounds, whilst the contaminated land officer also has no objections. And although the parish council has objected to the proposal site, as it is located out of the designated settlement boundary, it is just over 100 metres away from it. Being a brownfield site, what is proposed would not be new development in the countryside. Your planning department agrees that what is proposed is acceptable in terms of location, and on the balance of all matters considered, a recommendation of approval has been provided to you. It is important to note that there has also been a letter of support for the proposed development. To summarise, this proposed scheme complies with national and local planning policies, which are key material planning considerations in the determination of such an application. The application also complies with the planning policy for traveller sites criteria by providing an efficient mixed-use site. The proposal constitutes the use of brownfield land and would have no adverse impacts on the character of the area or the amenity of neighbouring uses. Just as importantly, this proposition before you today would provide much needed security for family with gypsy traveller status, which includes 3 children who require a stable environment, has been further identified in the applicant's own personal submission included in the application documents. As such, we would hope the committee will be minded to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Councillor Duffield, please, who's the ward rep. 3 minutes, please, sir.
Come on.
Oh, sorry.
Has there been any financial statement proving that the garden centre has ever been up and used? Because I've never seen any action whatsoever, and surely that should be a main determination.
It's actually not relevant to the application before.
Why is it not irrelevant? Listen.
But I agree, it's an oddity, because I actually drove past there the other week and saw shorthorns. I thought I didn't know that was a garden centre.
Yeah.
But it's not relevant to the
Fucking
application.
garden centre, not
Whether it's open or not open.
Relevant to the application in as much as it's a rural
Why isn't it
business.
not irrelevant? Why is it not irrelevant?
I would have said yes, that was. To determine the necessity for having people living on site. But anyway.
Okay.
With regard to
the
settlement boundary, you've had a case further down the road from that, adjacent. When there's a road in between the settlement boundary, that is not classed as adjacent to the settlement boundary, which had application turned down. There's been several applications turned down here, and that went for appeal.
Yeah.
Twice, I believe, and the appeal person turned the application down. So I was quite amazed that the officer actually recommended approval.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand with the gypsy.
Yeah, because I'm very shocked that it's going to get an approval, and especially when he's like when Matey Boy goes questions.
Maternity for not enough traveller sites and that, but there is a site, as you've already heard. Quite a large one within the area, and there are in the rural areas a few more sites which are not to full capacity. So with that in mind, I would hope that the committee turn this application down because it will have an impact on the area, visual, and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. It's open to questions from members.
Yeah.
I've got Councillor Crane, Councillor Bowes, and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Oh.
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Listen to this old thing. Listen to this woman.
Can't hear you. Bring it closer.
Touch it, love. Touch it.
I just really want to ask the question, are we determining this application under a gypsy and traveller occupancy, or are we determining it under, yeah, I can see you're nodding at me, Rebecca, so I don't really need to waffle on anymore. But, right, that's a very important point.
You said what I was thinking.
Thank you very much.
Rebecca, please.
Yeah, thank you. I did want to butt in before, but Nigel didn't let me. But yeah, just to be really clear, members, obviously Beatley is a How 4 village and it has a settlement boundary, and usually we only allow housing development outside the settlement boundary where it's immediately adjacent to the settlement boundary, which is what Councillor Duffield has said, which is completely true. The difference with this application, members, is what we're saying to you is they do meet the gypsy and traveller status from the information they provided, and therefore you are determining it in accordance with policy how
the information that they provided, but is that information correct? See? That's what I was saying.
08 of the local plan. This is set out at paragraph 2.5 of your report. There isn't a requirement in policy How 08 for the development to be immediately adjacent to the settlement boundary. The requirement is to accord with those 5 criteria, which are set out at paragraph 2.5 of your report. So your assessment needs to be, is this a suitable site for residential development?
Right.
Is it sustainable in terms of its accessibility to
Because there's not, it's accessible. They're not bringing anything into the area either, except their gypsy ways.
Beatley and other services? Is there safe access to the highway network? Is there ability to achieve neighbourliness? And is it sensitive to the local character of the area? So it's those 5 criteria at 2.5 of the How 8. So it's not relevant that it's immediately adjacent to the settlement boundary or not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bowes, please.
Thank you.
My question's been answered, thank you.
Right.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Crane did ask the same questions as myself, although we, in the local plan, Brecon local plan adopted in 2019, we did say that we didn't need any traveller gypsy sites considered till about 27, 28. So I'm just wondering.
Larger sorts of site, like 30, 40 plus people.
Why this one now feels it's got to be brought forward now. Are they the owners of the garden centre? Do they run it as a garden centre?
No.
Is this a backdoor application for residential?
He's the only one that's
Has it been turned down for residential building on there? It's a bit of a mixed match, really. It doesn't seem. Are they keeping the garden centre open and they want some accommodation, or is it a backdoor way of getting accommodation in there because they've been turned down with buildings? I know we're considering what's in front of us, but considering what we said in the local plan that we didn't need gypsy sites till 20, I think around about 26, 27, 28.
I know that.
Well, my planning officer is multi-talented, but I'm not sure whether she heard any of those questions.
No, I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, well done. I told her she was multi-talented. Multi-talented, she's...
Apology, members, I just want to make sure that I'm quoting the exact from the policy. So the local plan provision, you're right, there is a later provision that needs a further assessment, but there is a provision for 1 pitch in the local plan, of which Beatley is a location, but it's on the existing site. What we're saying to you members is this, as this fits the criteria, and the MPPF is supportive of the provision of gypsy and traveller pitches, and this is the 1 pitch that's outlined in the local plan, plus you'd have your retrospective one, apologies, that's actually 2 pitches, and it fits the criteria and the provision. We're saying that it is acceptable in that instance, but members, it is within your remit to say that is over the provision and not in accordance with How 8, and take a different view in that regard.
Was that everything answered?
No.
Oh, something about ownership. Was that the other question?
Yeah, are the applicants owners of the garden centre, and is it being run as a business? now, today, and are they being on site, obviously, to run the business?
The applicants have advised that they are running it as a business there today. We've got no evidence to the contrary to say that it's not. And we've assessed it on the basis that the business is operating and is continuing to do so. And they have said that in their assessment as well, that they will continue to
Google
have
something
both
which
the
makes me
residential and
laugh.
the business use element on site at the same time.
It's so slow.
Mr. Cardus?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is an existing use which has obviously been recorded by the council, and it's one family. Despite there being two pitches, it's one family. And they own the site. Thank you.
And although it's not fully relevant, is the garden centre operation?
I have nothing to tell you to say it isn't operational. It has an existing use. I've visited the site. I've seen items for sale, and as far as I'm aware, it is operational. They are selling goods.
Okay, it's not really necessary, but I was curious more than anything. I've got Councillor Kybird, and then we'll go back to Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a proposed non-standard occupancy restriction which ties occupation to current or previous employment in the adjacent business. So that probably, does that affect whether we grant permission, or does that only affect subsequent occupation?
See, I won't let them have it. No, fuck off, you fucking white cunt.
So it's not a personal permission, it's that the uses are tied together, so that you would need to be in employment or last employment in the garden centre to occupy those pitches.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be that family, another family could operate both in operation. I think with regards to the garden centre members, I'd remind you they're not applying for planning permission for the garden centre. The garden centre is there. As we've heard, it does have limited use. That doesn't prevent them from starting up that use as a garden centre or using it more intensively. I think your assessment is whether this is an appropriate location. We're not saying that the garden centre being there is overriding. We're saying it is a material consideration in the determination of this application. But it is the proximity to
I don't think it's because it's only the bus stop there.
The location of Beatley and the limited impact that we feel and the ability for Beatley to serve this specific family's needs with regards to schooling, that we feel it's appropriate in this location.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for out of interest and for clarity, can the agent confirm exactly what sort of businesses it is? Because on Googling, it says that it's a paving and fencing business.
Yep. I visited the site. I know they do paving and fencing.
I thought it was a garden centre, mate. God, they make you laugh, don't they?
I've seen a few items for sale outside on the occasion I visited. In terms of making a judgment on the use, in my opinion, from visiting the site and obviously the use classification that is formally accepted by the council, I feel that we have a garden centre use that can't be disputed.
Yeah, can't, mate.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Morris.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've just referred to what Councillor Boyce stated, that Beatley didn't have any facilities for them to access from this particular site. I'm looking at paragraph 2.5 and item 3 in that. The site is a sustainable location in reasonable proximity to relevant services and facilities, including but not limited to transport. Do officers think that reasonable access to transport is enough to overcome the fact there are no facilities in Bigley that I can enjoy?
What are you going to enjoy? Gypsy land. We've got the interbred sister brothers with rat tails and that. two-stripe tracksuit bottoms.
Is it referring to the services that are in the village itself, or in terms of what's there, or is it the transport element? I mean, obviously, from a local plan perspective, it is considered to be a sustainable village, and therefore that's why it has.
I'm struggling to see your face now.
So we have to accept that that's what the local plan says. So we could get into the nitty gritty about exactly what facilities are there, or
there's nothing there.
The exact bus services that do or don't run.
There's not even a fucking weed dealer, not even a heroin dealer or a crack dealer, not even a coke dealer. It's just a couple of old biddies in there on a Wednesday getting a purple rinse.
Please do. I mean, I'm thinking about, what you need if you talk about facilities.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
You need to go to a shop, a convenience store, or whatever. There are none available. You can get a very good takeaway from.
That's like a quarter of a mile walk to set a shop, but there's nothing there.
And the new inn on the street, but you can't get very much else except you can get your hair cut and you can take your children to school. So I don't think is what I'm trying to say is the provision of reasonable transport a factor which we can take into account to say that this is a sustainable location for people to get to Dereham and other places to do the things that you can't do in Beatley.
Thank you. So, just going back to policy HOW 08, it specifically says that one of the criteria, and these are criteria, not all criteria, that the site is a sustainable location in reasonable proximity to relevant services and facilities, included but not limited to transport, education, healthcare, and other community infrastructure provision. Now, we understand there's limited provision there, specifically, and the agent can clarify, but the family want to use the school specifically for their children, and that is why that location works specifically for that family. We've had to regard that in the process. Like Nicholas set out, HOW 04 is a sustainable settlement as set out in your local plan in the hierarchy of settlements. But, is there a doctor's surgery in Peatley? No, there isn't a doctor's surgery in Peatley. Is there ability to access that? Yes, we're saying there is a bus route. They're only at 130 metres from, walking distance from the village settlement boundary. So they are walking distance with proximity to access those services in the same way as any other resident in Peatley. But members, it is completely within your remit to take an alternative view to that and say there isn't sufficient services in Peatley to serve this family, and this is an appropriate application in that regard.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, you twitched. Okay, here we go. Item 211A, which is 3PL 2021-1524F at Beatley. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please?
No. Never.
9. And those against?
Yeah, 1.
1.
Look at that disgrace.
Harry's over on this one.
What a shocker.
Okay. 9. 1. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. This item is approved.
Yeah. What? Just like that. Yeah, fine. Alright.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna.
Nothing in the area.
It's 5-2. Might as well
If
just have
there's a shop, see,
10 minutes,
get it.
and then we'll come back.
I'm not turn this off now, do I? I'll stop this. Live. Stop. Right, stop. 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 That stops. Right, stop.